Welcome to Accelerating Your Dental Practice, a podcast with free expert advice to accelerate your practice's efficiency, growth, and profit. Here's your hosts, dental management consultants and friends, Malika and Michelle.
Welcome back to Accelerate Your Dental Practice. Malika and I are here today, and we are so excited to bring you another insightful conversation with an expert, I will say, in taking practices to the next level and sharing experiences.
Oh,
so yeah. Today
I was talking about. Sorry, I'm ruining this already. Okay.
You are not. This is fantastic. So today, our special guest is Dr. Sam, and Dr. Sam is a pediatric dentist in Boulder, Colorado. So she is about to celebrate her 1-year practice anniversary. So we thought it would be great for her to come on and kind of share the good, the bad, and the ugly of doing a startup. So I also want her to share, because she has a rather unique situation on how we got to the startup and to where she is now. So please welcome Dr. Would you like to share just a little bit about yourself?
Oh, about me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Sam. I'm originally from New Jersey. I'm a first-generation college student, so I had sort of a winding path to becoming a dentist because I was doing one thing and then I decided to go back to school to do another thing. I have 3 kids. I have a wonderful husband who is incredibly supportive, which makes all of this much more doable and possible. And we live in Boulder because we love being close to the mountains. We love to hike. When the kids get a little bit older, we'll hopefully get back to skiing, fingers crossed. And we just, we love being in the outdoors, and we find that Boulder really affords that ability, and it has really great schools and all that kind of good stuff. So we found our home here. But I'm originally from New Jersey, and I miss my family there too. So that's me.
Well, you are in my favorite state in the United States. So
you and me both. I love that. We go skiing there once a year, and I'm kind of like, can I just stay here? I don't want to leave.
Yeah. It's pretty lovely.
Yeah. So I want to kind of share your experience because it is unique, right? Doing a startup is not unique. People do startups every day. However, your path was different. And I want to share this because I do believe that other people might have similar opportunities. And you and I both know somebody that I'm working with now that has a similar opportunity.
Yeah.
But I feel like other people may have these opportunities too, that maybe they're just not aware of yet.
Sure.
So let's kind of start with that. So when you and I first started talking about doing your startup, it was really because the owner where you were associating was selling the practice.
Yes.
Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. When I was moving back from residency to Colorado, we really wanted to come back to Boulder. So I did this thing where I wrote a handwritten letter to all of the pediatric offices in a 20-mile radius. And he was one of the ones that got back to me. And I flew out and we met and we got along really well. And our intent was that I would take over the practice. So when I was there, I was the only practicing dentist. He'd had associates for the last few years because he wasn't really practicing very much. And so I was the only practicing dentist there. I was the one that all the new patients saw. I loved my practice. I loved my team. My assistants were great. The girls who did the insurance and the scheduling were great. And I was really happy. And then one day he came to me because I kept asking him, hey, when do you want to start talking about potentially selling the practice? We talked about it maybe after 2 years, after 3 years, And so he came to me with a letter, and it basically was from his lawyer in the nicest possible way, saying hey, we've got an offer on the practice. And I had right of first refusal in my contract. They're like, can you meet this? And so the offer was for the practice and the property. And I'm a person, not a business. So I talked to several banks, 3 of which said absolutely not. The cash flow of the practice wasn't enough to support buying the building. And one said, well, we'll do it, but here's 3 years of interest only payments and this terrible interest rate. And I almost did it because I loved my patients and I loved my practice and I loved my team. But I was talking with my father-in-law, who happens to be a retired pediatric dentist. And he basically said, because I was talking about maybe I can just offer to buy the patient list and I'll just start up somewhere else or I'll move somewhere else. He goes, if you're thinking about that, why don't you just open up down the street? And so there's a gentleman who I work with who does a lot of my financial advising. So I started talking to him because he was one person that I was trying to, buy the practice with. He was trying to help me navigate. And so he's like, well, just do a startup. And I'm like, what? My husband is particularly entrepreneurial, so he's all for, startups and new things and, kind of putting your all into like a specific project. So he was very supportive of that, thank goodness, because if it had been the other way around, which it has been the other way around, I'm like, I'm really nervous, it's going to be terrible, bad things can happen. But so then Joe, that was who my finance person was, connected me with you. I talked to actually a couple different potential consultants, and I really liked talking with you because I felt like our ethics lined up really well, right? And I feel like our personalities matched pretty well. So when we first chatted, I was at the point of I had already looked at several locations to potentially build out, and you kind of told me, well, I can kind of help you through this part, but my part is more like the actual practice. So you kind of helped me, with questions to ask and doing things for construction, but we settled on the location. I hired it was a wonderful construction company. They made the process way easier than I imagine it could have been. We had an architect who was also really lovely. And my equipment guy, who everyone in Colorado knows if I were to say the name. I really like him. Not everybody loves him, but I love him. And so I just had this really great team, right? I had you and I had the construction people and I had the Henry Schein guy, and in what could have been a terribly stressful, terrible time, because that's how it started, right? I was crying for multiple days in my office, making these phone calls, closing the door because I had a non-disclosure that I couldn't tell the team that they were selling the practice. And what could have been terrible and stressful turned into, well, it's a lot and it's overwhelming and it's hard, but it's as positive as it could have been, right? And so then we broke ground and gutted a space in October, and we started actually in this building in February. But in the meantime, since I was the only practicing dentist there, when the new office took over, I went around town and put up a bunch of flyers and let people know that I wasn't leaving. And I put up a website, and people started signing up on the website to kind of follow me. And I was thinking, well, it's going to be almost a year until I can actually see patients. So is there a way I can, maybe see patients other ways? And it just so happened that when I was handing out my flyers, an orthodontist was like, hey, do you want to rent a room for me and see your patients in the meantime? And I was like, is that a thing? Can I? So of course I call you, and you were like, oh, that's a great idea. You're like, figure out like what it would cost, figure out what the things are that you need. But like, that sounds, because, continuity of care is really important, and making, especially when you're working with kids, having someone that you know and already trust and feel comfortable with. And for the parents, right, like that's what they want for their kids. They want their kids to feel comfortable. So if I was able to offer that continuity of care instead of just saying like, hey, can you guys wait for me like a year and just maybe you'll follow me. So from, I think it was end of July of that same year that the whole sale happened, I started seeing patients on a weekly basis, almost weekly, between 2 to 4 times a month on Fridays until we opened in February. And so when we got started, we had like a little tiny patient list. Not tiny. We had, I think it was like almost 400 names?
I think it was about, 400 names on the list.
Yeah, it was like 375 or something. And, I'd seen some of them ahead of time, but then a bunch, the first 2 weeks of opening, we had a lot more patients than you would typically have in a new office, because
you had
everyone
recare.
was waiting for it. Yeah,
like, you had recare already.
I did. I had a couple of recares, and I'm like, that's unusual. And so that's how it went. Like, it wasn't my original plan. My original plan was to buy an established practice because I was already there and I already liked it. But when I moved here, we bought a house because our intent was to stay. And so when this all kind of went down, we're like, well, should we move? Do we go to like Washington State? Do we go to Oregon? Do we, we're looking all over, and we're like, no, we bought our house here. We want to stay here. We love being here. And that's kind of, we did a demographic study to make sure that the city could support another pediatric dentist. And considering the fact that I was one of the pediatric dentists and it said it could support a pediatric dentist, it felt like a pretty, I don't want to say safe, but reasonable choice to open, because it wasn't really a new practice. It was just moving one dentist, if you will.
So one of the things that I find so unique, because, Malika and I work with a lot of startups, and unfortunately, like it could be because of a transition. It could be because they have a non-compete, which, we're not even going to get into the gray area with non-competes right now, but
yeah,
some doctors, like, they can't do what you did. right?
Right.
You were so fortunate that the doctor that was selling the practice kind of released you of everything, right? So there was no non-compete, and you didn't do anything. Like, you didn't have patient lists. You didn't do anything. You just made yourself visible, and people just knew Dr. Sam. So by doing some of those things, it helped to create that opportunity.
Yeah.
I remember you were like, I need business cards. And I was like, no, just get a QR code thing on your phone when you're walking around with the kids outside. Like, people came up to you and were like,
I mean, I literally, like, I was walking my baby in the stroller and someone's like, Dr. Wait, what happened to you? And I was like, like, I'm opening my office. Okay, well, what's the website? I'll sign up right now. And, like, because again, I live here, like, I would see people in the grocery store. I would see people at my kids' climbing gym. I would see them at the jujitsu gym. Like, people knew me and recognized me. But the fact that I literally pasted flyers everywhere. Like, I went to preschools, I went to daycares, I went to elementary schools if they would let me, which eventually they did, because you had to, like, sign up with the county first, but eventually you can get in. I went to, like, toy stores. I went to, just plastering everywhere. And then there's word of mouth, right? Because, Boulder's a city, but it's a small town. It feels like a small town. Like, everybody knows everybody. Everybody talks about everything. And so that really helped too. But yeah, so, I mean, putting up, like, making yourself visible, right? Like, my website was up and ready the day that I left, right? Like, if you Google Dr. Sam Boulder dentist, like, that was the one that popped up. Which my husband's a software engineer, so he helped me do that a little bit. So that was nice. But, I mean, I think it was a very uncommonly advantageous situation, but I felt really lucky.
And so through the process, right? Because technically you had one practice, but had a temporary location and then a permanent location.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Malika and her team were, like, integral in making this work. Cause, like, we had to credential you in 2 different offices through the process. And I know we only went in the beginning with Delta when you were in the temporary location.
Well, Delta had the very interesting situation where they credential a dentist, not a location. So I could be in network with Delta wherever I was very easily, whereas getting in network with other ones was a more drawn out process. So we figured we'd be out of network with everything else, and then we'd be in network with Delta, and then we would figure out what to be in network with once we opened up. And I really appreciated that you guys did the research to say, okay, in Boulder, what are the most common dental insurances, right? Because you have, like, Boulder Valley School District. What insurance do they use? Google, Boulder County, CU is the big university here. Like, what insurances do they use? And that kind of helped guide which ones to be in network with. And that was quite a process. I hate insurance.
No one likes them. No one likes them.
No one likes them.
And, even being only in network with Delta during that, 6-month period where you're in the temporary location, you still had patients, like, they were willing to pay the out-of-network fee, understanding that you probably would be going in network with them.
Right.
And that's kind of your demographic out there, which might not be the same for somebody else, but they were very willing. And it had everything to do with you as a person and how you treated their kid and how comfortable their kids felt. They were willing to do that. So I think that collaboration using Malika and her team and kind of figuring all of this out was a lot to do with, like, the success you had on day one.
Yeah. And I think it was really helpful that, being very upfront about that too, is saying, if you're with Delta, like, I'm in network with you right now, but I'm not in network with anything else. I'm going to be very clear. I don't know what the coverage is going to be. I can't guarantee anything. We're going to collect up front. But I think people appreciate it, right? I mean, I think one of the things that people don't appreciate when they're interacting with an office is if there's sort of, like, you can't tell what's going to happen. So trying to be as transparent and honest and upfront with everyone as possible was really important. And then there were some families that were like, hey, you know what? Email me when you guys open, because I might be able to join you, but I just can't do out of network right now. Okay, well, we'll just keep you on your list. And then, like, I had, my list with, like, the green ones that were definitely following me, and the yellow ones that, like, said, email me back, and the orange ones that were like, well, I'm seeing somebody else, but they're kind of far away. So, like, email, and I kind of just knew which ones to go back to based on, what they were.
I mean,
so let's, go ahead, Malika.
What I want to say is I think it's really interesting, because I think what you did that was very unique was also that you as an associate built really great relationship with these families. It's kind of what I say when I speak at schools, like dental schools, like to the D4s. I say, when you pick an associate position, don't just make it a job or you just need a paycheck, because you never know what that opportunity can bring you. You
Yeah.
did was awesome because you obviously had a following and
Yeah.
they wanted to come see you. They didn't want to leave that office or go to another office. The majority of them were like, oh my God, where's Dr. Sam going?
Yeah, where's my dentist? Like they would come in because either they didn't get the message or they weren't sent the message. And a lot of families would come back to me and they said, I came to the office and you weren't there and I didn't understand why you weren't there. But I think you're right. And part of that was because my going into that office, I was intending to buy it. So I
Right.
thought it was going to be mine.
Right.
But I think you're right. Approaching it as, you're a member of this community. I mean, if you are, right? Because
Right.
I live here and my kids go to school here.
Right.
You're a member of the community. You want these kids to feel comfortable the way you want your kids to feel comfortable. And so the better relationships you have with them, the better your life is just going to be in general, right? Because day to day, it's so much more fun if you're seeing kids that you've already seen and you see families that you already get along with. But then it just happened to also work really well because I had good connections with a lot of families. And I mean, I had people call my personal cell phone, not the one thing, like Googled my name and found my actual cell phone, and I pick up and I'd hear like the mom's name. Like there's one particular mom. She goes, "Is this Dr. Sam?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I know exactly who you are." I'm like, "Yep, hi." I kind of just, because like if you know them, and I mean, and that's part of why I like being a dentist, right? I like getting to know people. I like, watching kids grow up and learning about what they're doing and knowing the families. And so, yeah, I think that it made it just so much more doable and possible. And yeah.
So I want to touch a little bit on something that I know stresses every single dentist out when they're doing a startup, and that is hiring the team and getting them trained.
Yes.
In pediatrics, it's a little bit different, because you need more assistance sometimes. You don't know. So like, let's kind of talk about what we decided to do for you. And again, you had a unique situation. We already knew you had a patient base going in. We weren't solely waiting on our founding patients list and all these new patients coming in. We had recare, we had restorative.
Yeah.
So we went ahead and we hired 3 people, right? A front office person and then 2 dental assistants.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So here we are 1 year later. How many of those 3 are still with you?
Can you see the 0 in my...
And honestly, like we did everything. Like we trained them. We had 2 weeks of training leading up to it.
Yes.
We like went through a lot. However, like we all know what the candidate pool is out there. We all know like what the work ethic is like out there. So one thing I want to say before we get a little deeper into the story about your team is don't be afraid. Like your first people may not be your long-term people. And it happens, right? It does
and
happen.
It's a good learning experience.
Exactly. So let's kind of talk about that. We had the 2 weeks of training. I came out for your opening day.
Yes.
And
Yes.
was there with you the first day that you were seeing patients.
Yes. Yes.
Kind of talk about our conversation a little bit.
So at the end of the first day, you said, I don't know if your patient care coordinator is going to work out. And I was like, yeah, I'm a little worried about that too. She's so nice and she's so sweet, but it just seems like she's not, like, what we're trying to train and what she's actually doing aren't really like clicking really well. And so I think you actually had the opportunity. You just stayed a second day by accident because that's how the airport or the planes worked out. And so you were there with her again, and I came in and you were like, yeah, no, this is not. She's like, I've been training. I've been trying to talk to her all morning, and it's not sticking, and it's not. And so luckily, right, I think what I did do a good job of was hiring nice people, because to her credit, when I went and I talked to her, I approached it as, hey, how's everything going? How's everything feeling after we've been doing this for a couple days? And she was like, it's a lot. And, I'm enjoying it, but it feels like a lot. And I was like, you know what? I feel like it feels like a lot too. And, I just worry that since it's a startup, it feels different than if you were joining a team that was kind of already established. And she goes, yeah, if you need to find somebody else, I totally understand. And I was like, oh my God, this is the best firing in the history of the world, because I don't need to fire you. We both agree that this is not working, right? So to her credit again, right, she said, I will stay on as long as you need me to, while you find somebody, which was great, right? Because she really was. She was very sweet and she was very kind with patients, but, she just, the things we needed her to do and kind of keeping multiple balls in the air at once just was a little too challenging. And so the person that we hired after her actually is here. Almost one of my first hires is here for the whole first year. And he was a dental assistant And he came on as our patient care coordinator. And so he had a lot of training to do, which Michelle helped with a ton, right? I think a couple weekends you guys met virtually, and I would sit down with him and do things, and he's a quick learner, which is great, and he's he has a generally like really positive attitude, and he's great with the patients, and he's great with the families, and he can field mean phone calls infinitely better than I ever could, and I give him a ton of credit. So he's like my little shield up there, because if a parent's like, well, I'm late, but can I come in, I'll be like, oh yeah, no, it's fine, and he's like, no, you can't. But so he's been with me for the whole time, and I think we learned a lot about hire slow and fire quickly, right? Is that the saying, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, the quick fire I think was really important, because when I went to the two assistants and I'm like, hey, this is what's going to happen, they're like, yeah, we kind of had that feeling about her as well. And I was like, okay, good, we're all on the same page, and no one's mad or angry, or like it was just a reflection on sort of performance. It was easy to kind of make the decision. So that was our conversation that led to the
and then
firing in the history.
Throughout the year, right? Like everybody has seen this, Malika, you and I've seen this so much. One day, one of the assistants just didn't come back after lunch.
Didn't come back. I was texting her. I was like, hey, are you okay? Did you get in a car accident? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And then my other assistant's like, yeah, she's posting on Instagram right now. And I was like, okay. Well, at least she's safe. She's alive. I have no idea. I had no idea. Like, I mean, you can ask my assistants, right? I do not yell at people. I am not mean to people. When I give like constructive criticism, I do it in like the kindest way, because I don't want people to get like offended or mad. And this person just disappeared. And I don't know. And then my other assistant, who was lovely, she quit 3 times because she was like, oh, it's too far away. I don't think I can do it. I need to start looking for new jobs. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for letting me know, right? Well, no, the first time she was going to quit because the one who left early wasn't really helping in the back. So the one who left early probably was going to end up getting fired anyway, because it was conflict between the two of them. But then she was like, oh, well, actually, I really like this job, so I'm not going to leave. And I'm like, oh, but I already put up an ad. Like, okay, I'll take the ad down. I was paying for an ad, but I'll take it down. That happened 2 other times. And finally she was like, oh, well, I'm going to go travel with my dad. And so I'm going to be out for a while. So I actually do need to quit. And I was like, okay. Then we had 2 assistants. Man, we did a couple different ones. And then one like kept showing up late to work, and she would tell lies about why she wasn't there that were easily disprovable. And now we have a really lovely assistant, and we're functioning as a team of actually just 3 people total, right? So I think having 2 really lovely, hardworking, reliable people is better than 3 kind of like, it's okay. So, I function as my own assistant when there's, siblings or 2 patients doing like recares, right? So my assistant has 1, I have 1, and my patient care coordinator is up there, and then he can float back because he's also an assistant, right? And so we function really well as a team. Everybody does everything, right? My new assistant is training up front. My upfront person is trained to do the back. I do all of the things, which is always funny when I answer the phone and someone's like, Dr. Sam? And I was like, oh God, I need to stop answering the phone. Like, I know who this is. So I've stopped, Michelle. I have stopped answering the phone. Good. I don't do it anymore. Because I remember you saying like, it's not a good sign when like the doctor answers the phone. I was like, yeah, but it's a non-clinical day, but they don't know that, right? They don't know why I'm answering the phone. But yeah, I mean, the team stuff was stressful while it's happening, right? I remember coming to you and be like, my assistant says she needs to quit. And you're like, oh, okay, well then, okay, let's figure this out. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, she actually is not going to quit. And you're like, okay, so then we're going to keep her. And I was like, yeah, we're going to keep her. And then she came back and did it again. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't.
And then she quit. And after she quit for like, I don't know, a month or 2, she's like, I really miss it. If you want me to come back, I'll come back. And I was like, no, like we have burned that bridge.
I remember that text, and she's like, hey, I know this is kind of weird, but I'm really missing working there, and I'm back in the, blah, blah, blah. Like, if you ever need me, let me know. And I sent it to you, and you were like, no.
It's fun, right? It's a journey. It's definitely a journey. And yours has been unique. Like it hasn't been without like bumps and twists and turns. But you're sitting here like 1 year of being in the permanent location.
Yeah.
If you could go back in time, is there anything you would do differently?
I probably would have intentionally started saving more money sooner. so that I had a more robust kind of cushion behind me, so that my success here isn't so dependent on me also being able to work outside of this office, if that makes sense. Again, because I took sort of a non-traditional route, I ended up going back to school. So I didn't really have a regular job that I was putting a lot of money into savings. My boyfriend, now husband, was supporting me through a lot of it, right? So, we weren't, and he was doing startups, so he wasn't making a ton of money because he was very interested in being entrepreneurial. But if we could have had sort of a more solid financial foundation, I think that's something I would have done differently, right? I would have intentionally, I don't live outside of my means. I would have been more intentional about trying to have the goal of, I want to have, X amount of dollars to be able to kind of live off of while we're building the practice versus, okay, I'm going to work this job and open a practice at the same time so that I can still pay for a mortgage and groceries and, my kids' activities and also try to open a practice. So I think the financial part, I think, was probably something that I would have redone or done differently.
And I think that's interesting because what I tell a lot of my startups is that in the first 6 months of opening, don't quit your associate job.
Oh yeah, I'm still in my associate job.
If you can even keep it 1 day a week, 2 day a week, that's a nice cushion of consistent cash flow that you have. Because when I look at startups that I've done where my startup wanted to cold turkey just quit, and ones that you can tell the stress levels. It's like night and day. And I'm like, it makes it
like,
you can relate.
If we're not making money for the first few months, I'm like, that's fine, right? Like, I just take, and then, when we do better than breaking even, I just take that money and I put it back into the practice. I'm not like, oh, I desperately need to keep this with me to be able to buy groceries, to be able to buy,
right.
I can invest it back in the business. And so I think you're really correct about that, keeping my associate job, which I've had 3 different jobs, 2 are kind of still ongoing, but having that, right? And also like not burning bridges, right? So like there's one job that I work with a public health clinic, and they were looking for someone permanent, but I couldn't be permanent. And then, they needed something different. So then I took a break from that, but then they called me back up and they said, hey, like, do you want to do a few more? Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. So, keeping positive relationships with the various offices that you worked at was important, because then I could kind of circle back and say, oh, you know what? I actually, I left this opportunity. Could you use me now? And they're like, yeah, actually, that'd be great. We were going to call you anyway. Great. Okay, perfect. So, just keeping a positive relationship is really important too.
That makes a huge difference. I think just seeing the difference of my clients' stress levels, it's night and day.
I believe that. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, as we're celebrating your 1-year anniversary, like, what are your goals for this year?
My goals would be to get to the point where I could drop my associateship if I can, and to be able to pay myself to at least replace what I'm making in the associateship would be nice, right? Because once I get to that point, I think I can drop it, or I could drop it. Or maybe I'll wait and I'll just build up a little cushion like I said I should have in the first place. But, getting to the point where I can, sort of pay myself would be nice. Having another assistant and opening potentially like another column. We're planning on opening, right now we're only doing 3 clinical days, and we're planning on July in opening to 4 clinical days, because right now I'm paying rent on a place for 7 days a week and we're only using 3 of them. So might as well, I'm also paying all of my people for 5 days if they want them a week, because for me, I think it's really important to give people predictable paychecks. I told them that as long as they are willing to, help clean the office and help do, ground marketing and all that other kind of stuff, I will always give you those hours. Like, if you want them, they're there. And I think that has really helped too, because I think people appreciate having that stability and that, that confidence that that's not going to go away. But yeah, so opening up another day, being able to pay myself a little bit. I'd like to do some more continuing education on different topics that I'm interested in. Also be able to send my people for continuing education, because we just went to a conference and they really enjoyed it. And so I think doing something like that more, right? Because I think they appreciate like kind of being able to improve and learn and develop their talents as well. And so kind of helping my team grow and expand and improve is going to be great. And then hopefully finding another assistant or 2, and then maybe getting another chair. We'll see. We have the space for more chairs, so if I could have another chair, that'd be nice, but I need to be able to pay for the chair first.
Malika, I'm going to give you a plug here, and I've been working with her on getting her to the Pediatric Growth Summit this one. However,
it's so expensive.
It's in Texas, and she's not thrilled about Texas. If it was in Hawaii again, she'd probably be there.
year we had it in Maui, and I'm sure you saw that. But the challenge with Maui was hard for a lot of people to get there. So
Yeah.
I loved it. It was great. We kind of brought it, and we brought it more center.
Oh yeah.
In Texas,
No.
we have options for hotels.
You should have it in Colorado.
Honestly, it was an option. The hotels we were looking at didn't have availability. Because so many people are getting they're backdated from their weddings from during COVID. So a lot of these hotels are so backlogged.
So booked. Yeah.
But if you can come, we love to have you.
I mean, I'd love to come. I love the idea of it. I blocked it off on my calendar.
Okay.
Right? I don't have
trying.
any vacation scheduled for those days. So it's an option.
Yeah.
It's there.
Have you. And
I just haven't committed
we
to
had
it.
last year we had so many teams there. I was so impressed.
Yeah.
It was like probably about 40 offices had at least 2 to 3 team members there, which I was like, wow, this is amazing.
I mean, because I think, like, especially if you have a team that you feel is like fairly solid and you're confident that they're going to stay with you, right? Having all of you go through that together is right, because then you're all working towards a common goal. Like, I love that idea.
True.
It's just
true.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Well,
no promises, Michelle.
I know. I'm working on it, right? If I can stay healthy, I plan to be there.
So you can hang out with Michelle.
Yes, I know. We'll share a hotel room. It'll be awesome.
That we can. We
sleepover.
certainly can.
It'll be great.
You wouldn't be the first client that I shared a hotel room. But thank you so much. Like, this was awesome. I think, you were so open about everything and like the highs and the lows of it. And, your journey is incredible. Like, I'm so honored that I'm still a part of it. I hope that like we're going to retire together. Right.
Yeah.
But I think like we had a lot of great stuff, and I think a lot of great insight. Are you open if anybody listens to this and kind of wants to reach out to you and kind of hear a little bit more?
I love that kind of stuff.
Fantastic.
I really do. I love talking about it, and I love being supportive. Actually, I don't know if I should tell you this right now, but the foundation that we're working with just asked if I wanted to do a career day for their kids. So I was like, yes!
That's amazing.
So I love that kind of stuff. I love talking about, like personal experience and trying to help other people do that. And I think, that kind of circles back to, I didn't have anybody in my family who went to college when I was a kid. And so having anybody who could act as a resource, even if it's, it doesn't have to be your family member, but if you can find someone to be a resource, it's so helpful, right? So for these kids, being a resource for them when maybe they don't have them to get from their individual families, or if, someone is trying to open their own office, but they don't have a friend who already did it. Like, I am happy to like have a phone call because, as you can tell, I'm a chatter and I like to chat. So
I love it. And I love, your story proves, like it totally proves that like, even though the road is bumpy, like if you have the right mindset and the right support system, like you can do it. You can get through it. You can have the success that you've dreamed of. And like, it's why I wanted to bring you on the podcast. It is why I enjoy working with you every day and like seeing your text messages come in. And so thank you so much.
Text you. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And I'll make sure your information's in the show notes so that the listeners can reach out. And maybe, in a couple months, we'll have you back on as a part 2.
Part 2. Bum, bum, bum. Yes. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on Accelerating Your Dental Practice. To connect with Malika and Michelle, visit czardentalconsulting.com and affinitymanagement.co and learn how they can help you accelerate your practice even further.